Greetings, dear learners. Continuing with the laws in relation to the poisons. In the last class, we learned the Pharmacy Act 1948, the Act to regulate the profession of pharmacy and to constitute the Pharmacy Council. The pharmacist should dispense all the drugs. This was the basic conclusion of the Pharmacy Act. Another act that we learned was the Drug Control Act of 1950, an act to provide the control, the supply, sale and distribution of drug that basically came with the purpose to regulate the dealers and distributor. Further, we learned the Drug and Magic Remedies Act 1954 that aims to control the advertisement of drug in certain cases and to prohibit the advertisement of magical remedies for certain purposes. Further, we read the Medicinal and Toilet Preparation Excise Duty Act that prescribes with the objective of implementing excise duty on the medical and toilet preparations and to give the license for the production and manufacture of such drugs. Finally, under the Insecticide Act of 1968, we learn about the rules and regulations regarding the import, manufacturing, sale, transport, distribution and use of insecticide with view to prevent the risk to the human beings and animals. Continuing with the same, today we will learn about the Narcotics and Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act 1985. But before coming to that, I would like to share two amendments that came recently in addition to the Drug and Cosmetic Rules 1945. The Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940 has the provisions that the center were given the power to make the necessary rules, to make the regulations about the provisions under the Drug and Cosmetic Acts. So using those provisions of Drug and Cosmetic Act, this new drug and clinical trial rules and the Drug and Cosmetic Amendment Rule came into the picture. This new drug and clinical trial rule 2099, that is an important rule. It shall apply to all the new drugs, investigational new drugs for the human use, clinical trial, bioequivalence studies, bioavailability studies and ethics committee. The rule defined all the terms that all the important terms related to the rule, that academic clinical trial, what is active pharmaceutical ingredients, what is adverse event, what is bioavailability study, what is bioequivalence study, what is clinical trial, what are the new drugs, what are new investigational drugs, what shall be the ethics committee rules, regulations, what is orphan drug, what is pharmaceutical formulation, phytopharmaceutical drugs, what is serious drug events, what are the licensing authorities and all other things came under this rule. Important provisions under the Act are related to the formation of ethics committee, their rules and regulation, registration and the licensing with the central licensing authority. The Act says that whoever intends to conduct a clinical trial of a new drug or investigational new drug shall be required to have approval of the ethics committee for the clinical trial, which should be registered with the central licensing authority, and the central licensing authority was assigned to the Drug Controller General of India. And any institution which intends to conduct the biomedical and health research shall have ethics committee to review and oversee the conduct of the such research as detailed in the National Ethical Guideline for the Biomedical Health Research involving human participants. Any person or institution shall conduct clinical trial of a new drug or investigational new drug except in accordance with the permission granted by the central licensing authority. No person shall take any of the clinical trial. In case of death or injury or disability in the clinical trial or bioavailability or bioequivalence study of a new drug, the sponsor who has taken the permission for conduct of clinical trial shall provide free medical management as well as compensation. So these were the written provisions made with respect to the clinical trial. I would like to share with you the exact copy of the Act so that you will be better able to understand what changes had been made under the new drug and clinical trial rules. So this new clinical drug and trial rule, this is a PDF copy of this new drug and clinical trial rule. So you can see this came under the 2019. This bringing of these the clinical trial rule was actually at that time COVID vaccine that came under the picture was also brought with the help of these rules. Actually, under this provision, you can see that chapter 1 deals with the definitions of the different what is academic clinical trial, what is the act means, what is the active pharmaceutical ingredients, what is adverse event, what are the bioavailability studies, what is bioequivalence studies. Bioavailability study means a study to assess the rate and extent to which the drug is absorbed from a pharmaceutical formulation and becomes available in the systemic circulation and availability of drug at the site of action. So bioavailability study and bioequivalence study, that is, there is no new drug that is being studied, but existing drug we are looking for the any new possibility. A study to establish the absence of a statistical significant difference in the rate and extent of absorption of active ingredient of pharmaceutical formulation in the comparison with the reference to formulation having the same active ingredient when administered in the same molar dose. Further, bioavailability and bioequivalence study center was defined. Biomedical and health research were defined. Central licensing authority means the drug controller of India. Clinical trial, what is the clinical trial in relation to new drug? Investigational new drug means the clinical pharmacological including pharmacodynamics, kinetics, adverse effects. Further, clinical trial protocol were defined, clinical trial site were defined, designated registered authority, efficacy, effectiveness, ethics committee, their purpose, good clinical practices, and those words were properly defined. New chemical entity and the new drug, that means a drug including active pharmaceutical ingredients or the phytopharmaceutical drug which has not been used in the country or to any significant extent except in accordance with the provision of the act, the rules met thereunder as per the condition specified in the labeling thereof, and has not been approved as safe efficacious for the sent by the central licensing authority. Further, drug approved by the central licensing authority for certain claims and proposed to be marketed with a modified or new claims including indication. Such type of definition, a fixed dose combination of two or more drugs, a modified sustained release form of drug, a vaccine or rDNA derived product, living modified organisms were included in another new drug, shall continue to be new drug for a period of 4 years from the date of their permission granted by the central licensing authorities. Another term is the orphan drug. That means the orphan means rare use drug intended to treat a condition which affect not more than the 5 lakhs of person in India. So they were termed as a orphan drug. Pharmaceutical formulations was defined. Pharmacovigilance, already known. Phytopharmaceutical drug was defined. Placebo, post-trial access, registered pharmacist. These all serious drug events were defined under the chapter 1 of the act. Further, chapter 2 was the authorities and officials, that is center, who is central licensing authorities, what delegation of powers to the central licensing authorities. So this is the exposure to the act. In this way the acts, all the acts that we discussed, I will upload them in the lower section of the topic so that you may read or at least see them. In this way these acts are made and they are presented finally. So you may refer to them for the understanding. Chapter 3 says ethics committee for the clinical trial, bioavailability and the bioequivalence study. So there should be ethics committee for the clinical trial, and requirement of the ethics committee, who shall be all the member, constitution of ethics committee for the clinical trial, who all should be the member of a clinical trial, who can be part of the member, registration of ethics committee relating to clinical trial, bioavailability and bioequivalence. So the the ethics committee that has been registered with the licensing authority, that is only authorized. Even the licensing authority may take the license of these ethics committee. Validity period of registration of ethics committee for clinical trial, renewal of the registration of ethics committee for clinical trial. So these all were mentioned under the act. Functions of the ethics committee. So every clinical trial shall be registered with this ethics after the approval of ethics committee with the clinical trial authority of India as well. So this was also later on provision after this act. Further proceedings of the ethics committee for the clinical trial, how to in the case of clinical trial, what should be the procedure, maintenance of records by the ethics committee for the clinical trial, what rules has been there for the clinical trial, these all had been mentioned under the act. Suspension or cancellation of registration of ethics committee for the clinical trial. So important, why it is important for us to know, because any new drug that is being brought can have a massive toxicity, massive effect. So it should come in the market with a proper certification, proper approval. So we must know that the particular drugs or chemical that is being tested or has a proper approval or not, that should be uh, in our knowledge. So we must know it as a toxicologist as well. So here the chapter 4 deals with the ethics committee for the biomedical and health research, ethics committee for the biomedical and health research. So this all additionally, apart from the clinical trial, for the all the ethics committee shall be for the biomedical and health research, that is already in the provisions. You may find in every medical college we have ethics committee that is deals with the all the types of studies on the biomedical and health research. So what all the requirement, how registration of the ethics committee related to the biomedical and health research, these all were under the chapter 4 of this clinical new drug and clinical trial rules. Suspension or cancellation of registration of ethics committee for biomedical and health research. Chapter 4 deals with the clinical trial, bioavailability and bioequivalence study on new drug and investigational new drug. So how the what all should be seen for a clinical trial of a new drug or investigational drug. No person or institution or organization shall conduct clinical trial of a new drug or investigational drug except in accordance with the permission granted by the central licensing authority, without the protocol having been approved by the ethics committee for the clinical trial registered in accordance with the provision of the rule 8. Without the permission of the licensing authority, without the approved protocol of ethics committee, every person associated with the conduct of clinical trial of a new drug or investigational new drug shall follow the general principle and practices as specified in the first schedule. No person or institution or organization shall conduct clinical trial of the new drug or investigational new drug except in accordance with the procedure prescribed under the provision of the acts and these rules. Oversight of the clinical trial site, then application for the permission to conduct the clinical trial of a new drug or investigational new drug, grants of the permission. So these all were dealt under the this clinical trial new drug and clinical trial rules. Further, one additional thing, condition for the permission of conduct of clinical trial, these all what rules shall be there. It is a long protocol that you can study them, and it will be useful those who are working in this respect of the clinical trial. Validity period of permission for to initiate clinical trial, post trial access of investigational new drug, and the academic clinical trial. What is academic clinical trial? No permission for conducting experiments shall be required of any drug from the central licensing authority where the clinical trial and inspect permitted drug formulation intended solely for academic research purpose for new indication or new route of administration or new dose or new dosage form. So in those cases, there is no need of for the academic clinical trial, there is no need of permission from the central licensing authority. Clinical trial referred to in clause 1 has been initiated after the prior approval of the ethics committee for the clinical trial, but ethics committee approval is required. Further, the inspection of premises relating to the clinical trial, suspension and cancellation of permission to conduct the clinical trial. Then the part B deals with the bioavailability and bioequivalence study of a new drug or investigational new drug. So oversight of bioavailability or the bioequivalence study center, application for permission to conduct bioavailability and bioequivalence study, grant for permission to conduct bioavailability and bioequivalence study. And then the chapter 6 deals with the compensation. Compensation in case of injury or death in clinical trial or bioavailability or bioequivalence study of new drug or new investigational drug. So a list of compensation had been mentioned, that importantly that those who are a sponsor of the study and those who are involved in the conduction of STD shall have the liability to sponsor for all the care and all the expenses that are occurring to the patient who are involved in the clinical trial study. So these all rules related to how to compensate, what all should be the methods of calculation of compensation, procedure for compensation in case of injury or death during clinical trial, bioavailability and bioequivalence study has been mentioned under these rules. Medical management and compensation for injury or death relating to biomedical and health research overseen by the ethics committee for the biomedical and health research as referred in chapter 4. Then the registration of the bioavailability and bioequivalence study center. These all are mentioned under this new drug and clinical rules. This is, I think, 242 page act rule that has been brought before in 2019 during the COVID period. The important that I would like to share with you is the SPD clinical trial method that was brought in case of the COVID vaccines, that when in case of necessity or where some disease that has the limited availability of drug is there, in those cases we may go for the SPD clinical trial. So what are the provisions for the SPD clinical trial, what the procedure and what all the rules are mentioned for the SPD clinical trial are mentioned in this new drug and clinical trials only. And the COVID vaccine that was given the SPD trial that was brought, I think, just because in a drug, there are the certain 4 stages of any drug when before bringing to the market. But the COVID vaccine were brought just after the stage 3rd only. So this was done as per the provisions of this new drug and clinical trial rules only. How once the drug that has been imported, how they should be labeled and how they should be kept. These all been mentioned under the act. Import of new drug and the investigational new drug for clinical trial. What is the need for that new drug? Why you need to import those drugs? What are the requirement? What is the import for the personal use or particular case use of certain drugs? That has been mentioned under this new drug and clinical trial rule. Inspection of imported new drug for clinical trial or bioavailability of bioequivalence for examination, test and analysis. Suspension or cancellation of import license of new drug for clinical trial or bioavailability or bioequivalence study for examination, test and analysis. Then manner of labeling, how they should be labeled. Any new drug or investigational new drug imported for the purpose of clinical trial shall kept in container bearing labels indicating the name and those all other things that has been specifically mentioned. Import or the manufacture of new drug for sale or for distribution. Regulation of new drug. Application for permission or to the import new drug for the sale and distribution. Further, the act has given a lot of thing to learn in this rule. Grant for permission of import of new drug for sale and distribution. If you can understand of this whole rules, then you can learn a lot of new things, and all the rules related to toxicology also can be understood by reading certain these type of rules and act. Condition of permission for import of a new drug for sale and distribution. So what should be the warning to be sold by retail on prescription of this, which shall be in the red box. And this post-marketing, how they should be marketed, what all instructions should be there. Suspension or cancellation of import permission of the new drug. License to import new drug for sale of distribution under drug and cosmetic rules. Application for permission to manufacture of new drug for sale and distribution. Then you have this grant of permission to manufacture of new drug for sale and distribution. Condition for permission of manufacture of new drug for sale and distribution. Then this all license to manufacture a new drug for sale or for distribution under the drug rule 1945. Suspension or cancellation of the permission, responsibility of imports or manufacture and marketing of new drug. Chapter 11, you can see the chapter 11 clause 86 we reached. that is import or manufacture of unapproved new drug or the treatment of patient in government hospital and government medical institution. So application for import of unapproved drug by government hospital and government medical institution. So how to, for certain particular cases you may need to import certain drugs. So in those cases, how the procedure should be, how to take license for that, how to take permission in all those cases has been specifically mentioned under those rules. So application for permission to manufacture unapproved new drug but under the clinical trial for the patient of the life-threatening disease cases. Government grant of permission to manufacture unapproved new drug but under the clinical trial for treatment of patients with the life-threatening cases. Condition of the permission, and then the inspection of unapproved new drug but under the clinical trial manufactured for patient of life-threatening cases. License to manufacture an unapproved new drug but under the clinical trial for treatment of life-threatening disease under the Drug and Cosmetic Rule 1945. Then amendments to the Drug and Cosmetic Rule 1945. In the Drug and Cosmetic Rule 1955, after the Rule 12DA, the following new rule were inserted: that non-application of certain rule of new drugs and investigational new drug for human use. That is, you had seen that this clinical trial were included under the Schedule X of the X of the Drug and Cosmetic Act rules. So Part X say and the Part Y shall not be applicable in respect of new drug and investigational new drug of human use for the date of coming into force of the new drug and the clinical trial rules, and the references in respect to human use made in these rules shall respectively be omitted, and the construction thereof shall be construed accordingly and shall stand amended with all cognizant meaning of the grammar. So they will be under the 12TDDA. Then the chapter 13 is the miscellaneous pre-submission meeting and all the remaining post-submission meeting. Then the constitution of expert committee, name of the countries for the purpose of new drug approval, mode of payment of fees, this department of applications, order of suspension of or revocation of public domain, digitalization of form, applicability or case of inconsistencies, savings. And then the important is the general principle and the practices for clinical trial, approach to design and analysis, development methodologically, and all those with respect to clinical trial, phase 1, how phase 2, how that should be conducted, and all those phase 3 clinical trial, phase 4 clinical trial. So you must know what are all these phases in the clinical trial of a new drug, so that you will be able to understand the development of drug. To develop a new drug takes years of the hard work. So requirement and guidelines for the permission to import or manufacture of new drug for the cell to the undertake the clinical trial. So these all, and these under this only, this all what is requirement before the conduction import of the manufacture of the new drug after the clinical trial at the stage 4, or what all requirements should be there, so that you can market in the public or you can go for the stage 4. So all those things has been specifically mentioned, so that those who are working under the clinical trial, they can make use of it very well. I think I will suggest you to go through it in detail, and you will, there is various performa and applications that should be there for the clinical trial purposes. So these all were mentioned under this new drug and clinical trial rules. So to summarize, should be for the clinical new drug and clinical trial rules. For the clinical trial, a proper ethical clearance and the licensing from the central licensing authority should be obtained, and in case of any death or injury or disability due to the clinical trial, the compensation shall be done by the sponsor of the who has taken the permission for the clinical trial. So this is about the clinical trial and new drug rules. Further, the Drug and Cosmetic Rule 1920. This rule came along with this new drug and the clinical trial rules, This is basically the purpose of this drug and cosmetic rule was to codify separately and to update the rules related to the cosmetics. So all the provisions related to the cosmetics were codified at one place under this uh, and this was basically called as Cosmetic Rule 2020. I would like to again show you this Cosmetic Rule 2020 in a brief PDF view. So again, this is a drug and cosmetic rule 2020. So this rule came to codify all the rules related to the cosmetics. So you can see here all the definitions in the chapter 1, and then they have the this who are the licensing authorities and all those that thing we learned in the drug and cosmetic act were brought under this in a modified matter. Who are the licensing authorities, what all the rules and what all provisions, those who are not following with the provisions under this shall be, how this will be punished, and all those were included under the Cosmetic Rules 2020. Establishment and function of central cosmetic laboratories, and what all should be the, and then the part 3, import and the registration, who can, what all rules related to import of the cosmetics. No cosmetics shall be imported into India unless the product has been registered in accordance with the rules by the central licensing authority or by the person officer whom the power has been delegated. Here also the central licensing authority is the drug registered general of India. So these all, again, the cosmetic grant of import for registration, and because again the cosmetics products are again can be the toxic. Many times these cosmetics are consumed by the pediatric group as well. They think to be sweetener or like that, they consume it. So many of the cases on the poison control centers we receive call like that someone has consumed this home product and like that, should be worried or not. So in those cases, what chemical constituent of those cosmetics are, what are the their warning signs, how they should be labeled, and all those should becomes important in the poisoning perspective. Import of cosmetic for personal use, so what import through the point of entry, so this excise duty and custom duty act. Manufacture of the cosmetic for the sale or distribution, so what, how to take license for this, and what all minimum requirement for those who are involved in manufacture shall be there, were mentioned in this Cosmetic Rule 2020. Further, under this grant for the refusal of license, further application for license, appeal to a state government, validity of license, inspection for the verification of the compliance. Then chapter 5 is permission for import or the manufacture of new cosmetic. So what to take permission, labeling, packing, and the standard for sale of the distribution of the cosmetic. So manner of the labeling. So these type of labeling shall be made on those cosmetics. So this outer label and of the cosmetics shall carry a declaration of the net content expressed in grams in terms of weight of solid fluid measures. So whatever we are seeing on a packet of any object who are marketed, they are following the rules. In case of cosmetic, where the hazard stage, every inner level should clearly indicate adequate direction for safe use, any warning, caution, or a special direction required to observed by the consumer, a statement indicating the names and quantities of ingredients that are hazardous or poisonous. In case of imported cosmetics to be marketed in India, import registration certificate number shall be mentioned on the label of unit pack and preceded by a letter RC, registration certificate number, with name and address of the importer. So such types of rules has to be followed under this cosmetic rules. Prohibition against the altering inscription on containers, labels, or wrappers of the cosmetics. Prohibition against the false or misleading claims. Labeling of hair dyes containing dye, color, and pigments. A special provision relating to toothpaste containing fluorides. So fluoride content in the toothpaste shall not be more than 1000 ppm, and the content of fluoride in terms of ppm shall be mentioned on the tube of the cartoon. So what is the fluorosis? What all we will learn in later periods. So what effects the fluoride can cause on the body, the standard of cosmetics. So these all shall be suppose this provided further that following cautionary notes should be printed and shall appear in conspicuous manner on the wrapper package of his soap, namely contains hexachlorophane, not to be used on babies. So all the warning signs. So what is the toxicity of hexachlorophane? Cosmetics imported or manufactured in countries shall contain the mercury in the following proportion. So everything has, this is a very important section in this. What is the maximum should not exceed this much of quantity on the other finished cosmetic product. Additional mercury should not exceed 1 million per 1 ppm. The use of lead and arsenic compound for purpose of coloring cosmetic is prohibited. No person shall use any animal for testing of the cosmetic. So this all are very important for our perspective. Procedure for sampling for test of analysis, seizure and the report, testing of cosmetic from the purchaser, procedure of sampling, forms of receipt of seized cosmetics, manner of certifying copying of seized documents, form of the intimation of purpose for taking the sample, provision of sale, procedure for the receipt of the sample, dispatch of sample for test and analysis by the order of the court, recording of the conditions of the seals, report of result of test analysis, issuance of the certificate, confiscation of cosmetics, implements, machinery, procedure for disposal of confiscated cosmetics. Then chapter 8 is the approval of laboratory for carrying out the test on cosmetic and their raw material. So what all the raw material and what all should be there for the those who are involved in testing of the cosmetics. So testing agencies should also have the proper certification, proper license to provide the license to those testing agencies. General condition after approval. So these all has been mentioned under the cosmetic rules. Then exemption of the cosmetics, voluntary recall of the cosmetics. See, certain cosmetics has been exempted. Cosmetic as may be specified in the 12th schedule shall be exempted from the provisions of chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the act, and the rules made thereunder to the extent and subject to the condition specified in that schedule. So there are the list of the cosmetic that has been exempted under the these provisions of these rules. Exemption reason being because of the simplicity, or that are already having not to be worried much in those sites. So such cosmetic has been exempted. So the different schedule where the how to label them and what all the application and all those things should be there. So then the second schedule is the information undertaking required to be furnished by manufacturer by and is authorized importer or distributor or agent with the application form for import registration certificate. So these all has been given in this different schedules under the act. What are the applications? Everything has been already framed. Fee payable for the license, permission and registration certificate. What are different fees that are payable? So you can go through the different schedule. There will be list of the cosmetics also, that these are all will be called cosmetics, and this all will be exempted from these rules. What all ingredients and what all, see, you can see this schedule. Categories, what does it mean by the cosmetics? A list of category of cosmetics for imports: face care products, face masks, eye contour products, lip care products, these all. So they can have a toxic and side effects on the body. So that is a matter of concern, and that is matter of toxicology as well. So we must know these things. So you can see this all products has been specifically mentioned, what all products shall be there as a cosmetics, and what all imports and what thing can be imported and what things are under this act. Then the fee for test for analysis of central cosmetic laboratory or by state laboratories. What all test addition strength as content. These are the tests for the cosmetic qualities and what all contents are there. So the fees that are the payable to these that has been also mentioned under these rules. Fee for microbiological test, microbiological limit test. Then the sixth schedule is the different undertaking for the import of cosmetics. These all the for formas, various applications and all those things are there. Good manufacturing practices and the requirement of premises for the manufacturing of the cosmetics. So these all are under the schedule. So with this, I will suggest you to go through it, and you will have a lot of things to learn in this, and I will include that at the end as a PDF, as a subject more to learn with the topic. So you can find it, and you can learn them from these things. I will include all the acts that we discussed till date, and further whatever we will be discussing, I will uh, give them under the reference section of the notes. So I will suggest you to go through them, and you will have a lot of understanding, a lot of information you will get from these things.